This is the hardcore icon, Just Incredible, and you're watching the Hannibal TV. Now that's not just the coolest, and that's not just the best. The Hannibal TV. Now that, my friends, is just incredible.
So this is Laura from thehannibaltv.com, and today we have a special guest, former ECW World Heavyweight Champion Just Incredible, who was also known as PJ Walker and Aldo Montoya, the Portuguese Man of War in WWE. Thank you for joining us. Sorry.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Sounds good. So happy belated birthday. I guess your birthday was on the 16th?
I know. I turned 46 years old, believe it or not. So, not getting any younger, that's for sure.
Same birthday as Hannibal.
I know. I'm familiar with that. That's really cool.
So to get started, would you like to speak to us about your early memories growing up?
I was always just such a big pro wrestling fan. I remember back when I was growing up, and I must have been 10 years old, I remember I had a black and white television set, and the first memories I have of professional wrestling was watching Hulk Hogan pin the Iron Sheik for the World Wrestling Federation Championship. And from that moment on, I was just like, wow, I mean, this is, amazing. So I fell in love with the business, with the sport, with the entertainment of professional wrestling.
What was your childhood like? Like, what kind of grow up you had?
I came from a middle-class family. I went to Catholic schools, normal kid. I played sports. I played basketball, baseball, hockey. I loved all kinds of sports, soccer. So, just an active kid, but always in the back of my mind, like when I was 16 years old, I used to take my parents, when they were at work, take their mattresses out of the bed and wrestle in the backyard, which they didn't like too much. But I already had that idea back then that I really wanted to be a professional wrestler.
Did you ever do any amateur wrestling?
Believe it or not, no.
No,
I never did any, no.
What was your favorite memories of wrestling when you were young? You spoke about Hulk Hogan.
Sure. My favorite memory had to be the first live event I ever went to was in 1989. It was Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat, where Ricky Steamboat had won the NWA title from Ric Flair, and me and my friends got to go live. And that was I'd never seen professional wrestling live before, so to me that was like such a big deal. It was so cool. I really enjoyed that, and that, it was amazing to me to be all those fans and, in these two gladiators, wrestling in the ring it was mind-blowing.
Oh, I bet.
Amazing, yeah.
Who were some of your favorite wrestlers?
I have to say Ric Flair, Rick Steamboat, Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, Harley Race, and of course a friend of mine today who I wrestled with and wrestled against, Terry Funk.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
It's interesting that you went to Calgary, Alberta to train at the Hart Brothers camp, but the dungeon was not running at that point.
It wasn't, no.
So can you explain who was running the Hart Brothers camp at the time, and what was the training like?
There was this gentleman, I'll rewind. I just graduated high school, and I knew I wanted to be a pro wrestler. And I saw this article in one of the old Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines. And there was a big advertisement that said, Hart Brothers, dare to be great, learn how to be a professional wrestler. So I was like, oh my goodness, wow, because back then there was no internet, and wrestling was still very much a closed society. So what I did was, there was a number, I called the number, I spoke to Bruce Hart, and he gave me the price that I needed to come up with.
Can we ask what was the price?
It was $2,500.
Well, back then,
US.
that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and I also would have to buy my plane ticket. And so I saved up the money and, worked all summer long. And when I was 18 years old, I flew out to Calgary, and Keith Hart and this gentleman named Ed Langley was also helping run the camp at the time. And Lance Storm, who had actually been through the Hart Brothers camp the year before, was the actual main trainer, because Keith would show up a couple times a week and work with us, but he was a professional firefighter in this, for Calgary, in the city of Calgary, so he couldn't show up all the time. So Lance Storm and Chris Jericho had actually gone through the year before in '91. I graduated in '92. So yeah, those were the guys that did most of the bumping around with me. But Keith Hart was there a lot, and that was the start.
May I ask, what were your thoughts of Keith Hart?
Oh, he was a very kind man. He was a nice man. But the Hart Brothers curriculum, let's say, was very strict. I mean, even for the first week, when you got there, we're like, you always think you're going to get inside the ring and start doing, all kinds of moves, high spots, stuff like that. First day, what we had to do was we had to set up the ring, and there was 12 of us. 12 of us started at this camp, men and women.
Anyone worth naming?
One guy, and at the end of the story, I'll let you know.
Of course.
But so 12 people started, so we would set up the ring, and then once the ring was set up, at the end of the day, we thought, okay, now it's time, because the Hart Brothers ran Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It was a 5-day-a-week camp for 2 months. They ran July and August. So we didn't get to go in the ring the first day. So then the second day came. For sure we get to go in the ring. Nope, they had us running and doing, dead squats and all kinds of calisthenics and, strengthening stuff. And totally a lot of us would be so exhausted we'd throw up. Just really rigorous, hard training. And, then when we finally got in the ring on the, day 3 or 4, still didn't get to learn any wrestling. We would just stretch and really do more they would exercise us to death for the first week, and then I think at the end of the first week, I think one person quit. They were like, well, I didn't sign up for all this military style stuff. This is, and they left. So eventually, it kept, it kept progressing to where you learned how to take a bump. You learned how to run the ropes. You learned how to lock up. You learned how to take a headlock. And slowly you began to do more and more, but it wasn't very easy. They would push you and repetition to where they almost tried to purposefully break you spiritually, emotionally, and sometimes maybe physically. So let's just say at the end of the camp, where I said that 12 men and women started, only 2 finished, and the one that finished was myself and this other gentleman. His real name is Brett Farrell, who wrestles in I think it's North Bay, Ontario, as Big Daddy Hammer, who still wrestles today. It was 12 men entered and only 2 finished the camp.
Very impressive.
Yeah, so it was definitely a cool experience.
What was Lance Storm like at the time?
Oh, he was really great. Just how he is today. I mean, he was, and that's why his Storm Wrestling Academy has done so well. He has such a great spirit and so much patience for working with young talent and younger people and explaining the business. And he has such a kind soul, but still very, in his own way, not mean, but strict. And he expects nothing but the best. So Lance was a huge part of the way I took pro wrestling seriously.
You mentioned Chris Jericho was present at the time.
Yes.
Any memories worth mentioning of him?
Not really. He didn't come around as much because that was really when Keith wasn't around. That was Lance's job, was to make sure we did our drills and to instruct us. But or Jericho would come around because Lance and Chris used to bounce at a nightclub, at a dance club, to make extra money. So Jericho would pop in once in a while, and and Chris was the same Jericho you see today.
So are you impressed that he became one of the biggest stars? Like, were you surprised or?
No, not surprised at all. Not surprised at all. Not even a little bit. Chris always had those. He had those good looks. He had the ability, the physical ability. He could talk. He was very charismatic. So no, I never doubted for 1 second that Chris would make it.
Interesting. Did you have any interaction with Stu Hart in those days?
I did not.
No.
I did not. I met Stu in the WWF when I was already there as Aldo, but I did not, at those days, I did not meet Stu Hart in the days I was training, at least.
What about Bruce Hart?
Bruce, I met a couple of times, both in camp and in the WWF when he came to do Survivor Series. I believe it was in 1995.
What were your thoughts on him? Or not much interaction, or?
Not much interaction, but he was, Bruce was always more of the, I hate to say this word, but he's more of a con man, where Keith was very kind and open, and Bruce was more or less, just, you had to be careful with Bruce because he was always trying to get one over on you, whether it was financial or otherwise. So at least that's the impression I got from Bruce.
Did you have any interaction with Bret Hart when you were in
God,
Calgary?
yeah. Bret and I got along very well. I many conversations with Bret. We used to go on tour overseas to Germany, to Africa. I would always sit on the bus with him and just ask him questions, about how he got to where he was, and if there were any suggestions and stuff like that. And to move back real quickly in the storyline, when I finished wrestling camp, they were starting a league in Calgary called Rocky Mountain Pro Wrestling. My first pro wrestling match was in Calgary, right across the street from the Calgary Stampede. They ran once a week on Fridays, and my first 10 matches I had professionally were there. And one of them, my fourth ever match was against Chris Jericho. Oh. And my sixth ever match was against Lance Storm. And I know they're out there on YouTube somewhere. I just haven't been able to find them. I have them on VHS tape somewhere at home. But yeah, those were my first couple of matches. But going back to Bret, no, I always spoke with Bret, but I had more of a relationship with Owen. He was the one that really, him and I really bonded. He was easy to talk to, and he was really different from all the other Harts. He was very lighthearted, very much a prankster, a jokester, and a family man, and him and I always got along real well. He was real cool. Good.
What about the British Bulldog?
Oh, I love Davey. Davey was always one of my favorites. He helped me out so much. He always gave me, so much wisdom. Sometimes when you're a young guy in the business, sometimes they seem, you get ribbed, or what they say, pranked a lot. And Davey would always come up to me and be like, "Hey kid, don't give me a little nudge on the shoulder. Don't take it personally. They're just trying to get to you. Just don't pay any attention to it. You'll be all right. They're just trying to test you." So Davey and I were always really cool, really cool.
What independent wrestling leagues did you work for while in Alberta?
The only one I worked for, my first 10 matches were with Rocky Mountain Pro Wrestling. Oh, yes. And around December, because they weren't paying us anything, the money ran out on my end, and I just had to come home. So right before Christmas of 1992, I decided to come back home to Connecticut. So couldn't do it anymore.
They didn't pay you?
Oh, they never paid us, no.
Ah, okay. It was volunteer work.
Well, I just wanted to be in the ring, and I got to work with some great stars and gaining a lot of experience internationally, especially. So I was just happy to be there. I worked with, Calgary legends like Beef Wellington and Jerry Morrow and Skull Von Crush, and again Jericho, Storm, and so many other people that to me it was worth working for nothing to get that experience.
Could you remember your favorite match from Alberta?
Had to have been my first one, because it was actually a pretty good match. Even though it was with the kid that Brett Farrell, who wrestles as Big Daddy Hammer today. It was we were the only two that finished the camp that we started, so they put us together in the first match. So we were very relaxed, and of course we'd planned that match out all week long, and that was probably my favorite.
Who did you work for on the independent scene when you came back from New England?
Believe it or not, I didn't. It's funny, when you wrestle, or when you finish wrestling school, you think you get some kind of identification card or some kind of a pass that says, hey, you're a pro wrestler now. It doesn't work that way. So at first I had a very hard time because there was no internet. I didn't know anybody over here on the Northeast. So I just kind of started to go to small shows, and I worked for, maybe 6 or 7 matches for very, very small independent wrestling companies. I don't even remember their names, in Massachusetts and Connecticut and stuff. But then one day, I remember Lance Storm telling me, or, I don't know if it was Lance or if it was Keith, but you got to make your mark, and you got to take a chance. So they always tell you, it's the old wrestler story. You always have your gear in your trunk of your car, just in case somebody doesn't show up. So there was a WWE live event, or back then WWF live event, about 20 minutes from my hometown. So me, 19, 20 years old, I was 20 years old at the time. Took my bag, put it in my trunk, and I drove off. And somehow I got, I just said I was, security. Who are you? Oh, I'm one of the wrestlers. They let me go by. I'm like, okay. And I met this man in a suit, and I said, hello, sir. My name is, PJ Walker. I was trained by the Hart brothers, and I'm here if you brought my gear, if you need anybody. I'm here. And that gentleman happened to be Tony Gurria from the WWF. He was a former wrestler and agent at the time. So he says, well, son, I think we're all set for tonight, but if you're more than welcome to watch the show from backstage. So I just stayed very quiet, watched the whole show, was like, wow, blown away. And at the end of the show, I went and shook his hand and said, sir, thank you for your hospitality. Really appreciate it. And he goes, well, what's your name? And, your number. And I wrote down my name and number. And he goes, well, if you're interested, in a couple of weeks, we're starting this new show in Manhattan called Monday Night Raw. And we may need some extras. And I'm like, okay. So, 2-3 weeks later, he called me. And I believe I was on one of the 2nd or 3rd episodes of Monday Night Raw ever against Lex Luger. So, and that's how my connection with the WWF started.
So was there a difference in the style of wrestling from New England to Calgary, or it was similar?
In Calgary, it was very much more professional. I felt the Canadian style wrestling was much more polished. It was much more, and I found in Connecticut it was still very sloppy, very almost backyard. Something was starting to happen back then. I don't know really what it was, but it wasn't as professional as it was back in Calgary. So, when I did start doing more and more independent shows, I rose right to the top because a lot of these kids didn't really know what they were doing. I was 220 pounds because, the Harts always said, be in shape, lift weights, stay, run, jog, whatever you have to do, stay in shape. And a lot of these kids didn't look like athletes, and they certainly didn't work like athletes. So I started to get success quite easily, and Yeah, there was a huge difference though. It was like night and day from Calgary wrestling to independent wrestling in the Northeast.
When you spoke about your first WWE enhancement jobs that you got right away, were you hooked on it because of the? Were you hooked right away about it, and how was the pay in those days?
I was excited. I mean, just to be in that situation was surreal. I mean, the rings were so much bigger, the lights. I mean, just everything was just so incredible, and the fans, of course, were so loud. The payout was $150 for everybody, which, hey, I'd never gotten paid more than $20 to wrestle a match, so I get to be on television wrestling against people that I looked up to. So it was great for me, and the more and more they started to like my work, I'd start getting more and more phone calls to the point where I was booked at one point, come 93 to end of 93 to 94. I was booked everywhere for WWF television. I was on almost every single TV taping they had. I'd done quite a bit for them.
As you mentioned, you wrestled, Lex Luger in 1993. Mm-hmm. And we did an interview with Luger with the Hannibal TV not too long ago, and he admitted having a bad attitude in those days.
Yeah.
What do you remember experiencing with him?
With Lex, about having an attitude?
Yeah, I guess all of the above.
He wasn't bad. I mean, there were times, maybe later in the Aldo days, where he had a bit of an attitude, but I never really, hung out with Lex very much. He was to me, he was very quiet, and I kind of shied away from him, but yeah, he was known to be a bit of a prima donna in those days. He really was, but I mean, he personally never did anything to me. But I just kind of stayed away from him. He was just one of those guys you didn't really want to be around.
Fair. Some wrestlers, such as the Steiners and Ludwig Borga, if I'm not mistaken, had a reputation of roughing up a bit the new guys and the enhancement talent.
Yeah.
Did you experience anything like this?
Man, the Steiners loved me.
Oh no, they took liberties with you?
No liberties. No, they loved me because, the thing was, a lot of the enhancement talent they had there really weren't very good. And I didn't understand it as much then as I do now. They're there to make you look good. And sometimes if they're not working with you, like whoever's the enhancement talent, if they're doing a bad job, and they're not doing a good job for you, you're going to have to do whatever you can, maybe rough them up a little bit to make it look good. So when I worked with the Steiners, I remember going to the Steiners because I'd worked with them more than once. And, Rick Steiner would be like, hey, what do you want to do tonight, kid? And I was like, hey, what about that last time we did this one thing and, it looked real good? And he's like, all right, we'll do that. Like, I was helping call their stuff because I was like, I know how to, I'll do the best I can for you. So when you had that kind of reputation where, he's one of the good ones, I never had any problem with those guys. Thank God. No, they were very good to me. They were very, very good to me.
What was the worst experience you had doing extra work?
Worst experience, okay. And I'm friends with them, actually. It was just a miscommunication, I guess. I was wrestling with the head shrinkers, the Samoans, Fatu and Samu. And it was on live Monday Night Raw. And they just gave me they pushed me up into the air, and one of them thought it was a back body drop where I was landing on my back, and the other one thought it was just me landing on my front. So one guy went one way, the other guy went the other, so I literally spiked my head into the mat, which I could have broke my neck. And I knocked out completely, and it was on live television. So, I could have had a broken neck right there. So they, instead of, stopping the match, they dragged me over to the corner because I was completely out, tagged in the other fella, and finished the match on them. on him. And the only thing I remember is waking up at home in my mother's house in my bedroom, because I was still living at home. I was a kid. And somehow I had my money. I drove from New York City to my house, which is, if you know anything about New York City, not a very fun place to drive. Somehow I got from there to home with all of my money, all of my stuff, not knowing how I got there. To this day, still don't know how I got there.
Wow.
So that was probably the worst. Yeah.
What was the difference between working an enhancement job with WWE compared to the World Championship Wrestling?
The professionalism. It was just, WWE was just so much more professional. You just really couldn't, you couldn't even compare how different it was. In WCW, it's like nobody knew what was going on. They were just all over the place, where in WWF, everything, I mean, they had everything nailed down to a science. You know, they knew who was next, what was next, how long, you know, how much time you have, who's going over, what's going to happen, you know, particular camera angles. Where WCW, it was just, they had no idea. They were just, you know, just doing it by the seat of their pants, you know. So they had, you know, WWF killed them in that standard.
What about the pay difference between the two companies with the same similar kind of work?
Same.
Same?
Yeah, pretty much the same.
And the ambiance or environment behind the backstage, was it the same or?
No, WWF was a little more intense, a little more professional. Again, WCW, it almost seemed like it was more of a, like everybody knew everybody. It was just another night. Where WWF, it seemed like this is business, because in WWF you got to understand that television is built to get you over, and if you get over, you make more money. And in WCW, I guess it didn't matter because you had guaranteed contracts, so everything was more relaxed and they didn't really care as much. So I think the WWF guys were a bit more hungry, and they treated it as such.
Did you ever wrestle Vader, who was also known for
I did. I wrestled him twice, actually. Once for WCW, and one of his last matches, I believe, in New Jersey for this small promotion called Pro Wrestling Syndicate about 5 years ago. But yeah, Vader was okay. He wasn't bad. He wasn't bad at all. Thank God. Thank God.
Yeah. What was your favorite match from WCW?
Since I only had two, I had the one with the Nasty Boys and the one with Vader. I would have to say Vader, just because it was better than the Nasty Boys.
You mentioned in another interview that you saw Vince McMahon doing drugs at a party before you were assigned for the company. Would you be willing to elaborate on that?
I never saw Vince do drugs.
Okay.
I had heard.
Oh, sorry.
I had heard that there was, right before his steroid trial, that, because he never went out with the guys, that before his steroid trial, and I believe this was in Texas, I'm not sure, I just recently heard the story again. I wasn't with the company either at that time, that he went out and, you know, got completely shit-faced. And remember on his steroid trial, he actually wore a neck brace to his steroid trial because he was at the bar and he was having certain wrestlers perform their finishes on him. So, yeah, it was one of those nights. But no, I never saw Vince do drugs.
Fair.
No, I never saw Vince do drugs.
What was the story behind you getting the victory over Arwin R. Chister on Raw?
Oh, I don't think there was much to it. I think it was just right place, right time. I think they did that thing where 1-2-3 Kid had beat Razor, and he was having a feud with Erwin R. Chister at the time. And I was a favorite among extras, amongst the jobbers, you know, and it was just basically, you know, they just chose me like they would have chosen anybody else to to just roll up IRS to get the 1, 2, 3, but it was really just to get heat between those two guys. But I think they knew at the time that they were going to start using me more often, because at that time they were also using me at live events, which extras really didn't do very much at the time. So I think that kind of had something to do with it a little bit.
So just to clarify, this was before you were signed?
Yes, this is before I was signed, yes. This is where kind of everything started to move forward.
And what was your reaction to this kind of rare event?
Oh, I was happy. I was, I kind of, you always, when you're a wrestler, you always want to think, oh, you read more into it than it is. You want to think like, this is it, this is my big break. Where sometimes, believe it or not, in wrestling, they just take a dart, throw it at a name, and where it lands, it lands. I'd like to think it was a little more than that, but yeah, I think they just put me in there because I was reliable. They knew I was, I could do the job properly, and that was it. That was it.
Was there any backstage heat when you after that?
Oh no, not at all. Everybody was thrilled. Everybody was happy. No, none whatsoever. And back in those days, I was already friends with Razor Ramon, so no heat whatsoever.
You have mentioned you have helped prepare Brian Lee for the Undertaker versus Undertaker SummerSlam 9 match.
Yeah.
Why do you think Brian Lee never really made it to WWE?
I don't know. I think
he's a big guy.
Yeah, he was a big guy, and we really didn't hear much of him afterwards. I mean, I remember being with him in TNA for a little while, but I just think he had a lot of demons. I think drugs had a big part to play in it. And Mark was friends with him as well, and I think he let Mark down. And the fact that the angle was horrible and it didn't work, I think all of it, one thing on top of the other, just kind of, cause if you think about it, you really had never heard from him again after that, really. So yeah, I think it was a combination of everything, really.
Can you explain the story on how you got hired by WWE?
Sure. I was actually in the studio. There was no performance center. I live only about 40 minutes from the office, as where I was born and raised in Connecticut. And Tony Gurria called me and he's like, hey, do you mind coming down Monday through Friday and, work out in the ring with this, guy we have that's coming in? And I'm like, okay, no big deal, So I get in there and it's, it's Mark, Undertaker, and first time I met Brian Lee. And they kind of explained what was going to be going on. And so basically we're just in our gym clothes. Mark was showing Brian his Undertaker moves, the way he moved in the ring, the way he did his maneuvers, his looks, the way he turned, stuff like that. So, we worked for 5 days straight. And at the end of the 5 days, on a Friday late afternoon, around 4 or 5 o'clock, it's time for everybody to go home, Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson came down. And we ran through a dress rehearsal. It was, Mark was, just dressed like in regular, gym clothing. I was dressed in my PJ Walker stuff. Brian Lee was dressed as the Undertaker. He did the entrance and everything, no music, but he just walked to the ring. Vince just wanted to get a visual. And then, we went through the match that we had planned. Vince, thank you very much. And, Mark and all them talked. And Pat Patterson came over to me and he goes, God damn it, kid. He's French Canadian. And I do a horrible French Canadian accent, but I love Pat Patterson. He goes, you're really good. Who trained you? And he goes, I said, the Hearts, sir. And he goes, hey, Vince, this kid trained by the Hearts. And Vince goes, oh, yeah, really? Yeah, very good, pal. And Pat and I continue to talk. And he goes, what nationality are you? I said, well, sir, I'm Portuguese. And he goes, holy shit. "Hey Vince, this kid Portuguese," and he goes, "Really?" And I thought nothing of it. So whatever, we say our goodbyes. I say, "Thank you, sir. Thank you all." I was supposed to wrestle Brian Lee following live Monday Night Raw, because it was all dress rehearsal stuff. So we go, we do it. It came out fine. And a couple weeks later, I'm at TV in Lowell, Massachusetts. And Vince McMahon literally pulls me aside. And Vince is a scary guy, very mafioso type. And he goes, could I talk to you outside for a little bit, pal? And I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna kill me. Something like that. So Vince takes me outside and he goes, "PJ," and there's an American flag, so literally could have been any more perfect, sitting outside, waving in the night. And he goes, "You see that flag?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "That's the United States of America, the land of opportunity." I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Kind of like the World Wrestling Federation. We're the land of opportunity." "Sir," he goes, "Son, would you like an opportunity?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir. Welcome to the WWF." He shook my hand, and a couple weeks later I had a contract mailed to my house, and they wanted a Portuguese character all along, and that's how that happened.
So I understand Pat Patterson had a lot to do with this hiring.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about Pat?
Oh, Pat's amazing. Pat's one of the most amazing, influential guys. Taught me so much in my career, in everything. I mean, he's just a very kind, gentle soul. I mean, if it wasn't for Pat Patterson, I don't think I would be where I am today. He was just, just the wisdom he'd give you. If he saw you do something wrong in the ring, he would correct you. If he saw you acting like a fool outside the locker room, he would yell at you, like, "Don't do that," whatever. He was a very, very good man and a good influence. He really smartened me up where a lot of guys of his caliber would not have. To this day, I still love Pat.
So there's a lot of rumors about Pat Patterson and guys like Steve Lombardi, Sylvain Grenier, and Jim Powers having special relationship with him.
Yeah, I heard that.
And that way they're keeping their jobs, a bit in the case of, or more in the case of Lombardi's, keeping his job for that long. Do you have any?
That's what they say. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. But, I know Pat very well, and when he lost Louis, who was his longtime partner, it broke his heart. So I don't know. I mean, sometimes, especially in those days where people didn't understand homosexuality, and it was, it wasn't okay to be gay. And Pat was always openly gay, which, he's a courageous man for doing that. I give him all the credit in the world. I just think it was an easy target. It's like, if Jim Powers is getting a push, must be because, look at him, he's got a good body. Pat's probably, I mean, I heard the stories too. Steve Lombardi, I heard the stories too. I know as much as anybody else, but I don't know. Who knows? But I just know that Pat and Louie were very much in love, and Lombardi was just more of I just think he was more of a stooge. I think they liked him there because he was a stooge for the office. Like if anything was going on, he would run off and tell Pat. He was like one of Pat's gophers, like, "Go for my coffee. If you hear anything, tell me this and tell me that." But who knows? You never know, man. You never know.
Is it true that your first gimmick was actually a Portuguese soccer player?
It is, yeah, because in those days the World Cup was coming, And they figured what a better way to embrace, the cultural global thing of the World Cup than to have a Portuguese soccer player, which never came out. I still have the drawing somewhere at home, believe it or not. And then the second drawing they came up with was literally something that looked like a Power Ranger. Literally, just a mask with this big long mane of hair coming out of the top, and these big shoulder pads that looked like the Road Warriors, and I looked like a comic book hero. Looked pretty cool, actually. And literally 1 week before one or 2 hours before I go out live on television, they hand me this outfit, and it looks nothing like the drawing that they made up for me. So
was that the Portuguese Man of War?
that was the original Portuguese Man.
So you were disappointed when you saw the mask and the outfit?
The outfit, not so much, but the mask, yes. We had a very hard time finding the mask, and the mask actually ended up being the Kane mask. The way the Kane mask is today, that's what the mask was supposed to look like. But I guess they were very understaffed at the time, and money was very tight at the time, that they just made it out of cloth instead of making it like a hard, comfortable, because the first one they made was just hard leather where you couldn't even move. Very difficult to breathe or even wrestle in. So, but the original mask was supposed to look like Kane's, but yellow, to match with that outfit. So
who presented this gimmick to you?
Seamstress.
So nobody fancy.
Believe it or not, things didn't work as organized as people may believe it did back in those days, at least.
So did Bruce Pritchard have anything to do with this creative of that gimmick? Or?
I don't know. I'm not sure. That I don't know.
So do you know who created this gimmick after all?
I just heard they had a creative department that created a bunch of these gimmicks. They created Duke the Dumpster Drosy, Mantar, Bob Sparkplug Holly, Skip and Zip, Atom Bomb, all these weird gimmicks. So they just had a department just, creating cartoon kind of characters. So no, I don't know who exactly. That's a good question, actually. I'd like to know that.
What were your thoughts on Bruce overall, and him now getting the job of executive director?
Bruce was always very good to me. He was good. He was all right to me then, but I didn't really trust him so much. Like you never do. I didn't know him very well, and he was very high up. But later on in life, after he and I had left the WWE for a very long time, before he had gone back recently, we had, just connected because his wife was suffering from terminal 4 cancer. And my wife had cancer as well, and we were really scared. And he gave me his number, and we exchanged messages. And he was actually very kind and compassionate. So, you always see two sides to it. I didn't expect that from him. I guess he was hurting inside. And I guess, maybe if he could help someone else. And it was I didn't expect it. But, me personally, I hear a lot of negative things about Bruce Pritchard, business-wise. But, as a human being, he was pretty nice to me. And, I'm grateful that he reached out to me,
Is your wife okay right now?
Right now, she's in remission. We're very blessed, but with stuff like that, you never can tell.
And may I ask you if it's the same wife you married in the late 90s?
I've been married, same lady since 1997, going on 23 years, yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So do you have any thoughts on your feud with Jeff Jarrett?
I loved working with Jeff. That's when they were giving Aldo a little bit of a push. I loved it. I got to work with Road Dogg, who ended up being a member of DX, who I'm still friends with to this day. I talk to him all the time. I loved it. He was great in the ring, very kind, outside the ring. Got to work with him when he owned Impact Wrestling, TNA Wrestling. So no, Jeff and I have always had a very good relationship. I loved working with him.
With everything that happened over the years, are you surprised he's back working with WWE?
No. No. No, in pro wrestling, you never say never. Regardless of what things are said or done, there is always a place back. Hey, if you're worth money to them, if there's a storyline to be told, you could always come back, you know.
Any memories of wrestling with Jerry Lawler?
God, just a lot of fun. The King is one of the most iconic characters in the entire world of pro wrestling. Such a professional. I mean, I don't think you could really get any better than the King. In so many places, I mean, he's funny. He's technically gifted. He could do it all. I mean, he is, when they say pro wrestler, should be a picture of Jerry Lawler, you know? So yeah, I loved working with Jerry.
Jake Roberts was around during this time.
Yes,
Any
he
memories?
was. Yeah. Well, Jake was a bit of a mess back then. He was struggling very much with drugs and alcohol. And, they were trying to find something for Jake to do. And he couldn't quite do it in the ring as much as he could have physically at the time. So they figured, well, why not put him with a young guy who needs help to get over and put him with Aldo Montoya, which was an interesting pairing. But then again, back in those days, man, they really didn't explore things the way they wrote week to week. Sometimes, you never knew what you were getting. And I wish they would have explored that a little bit further, because I thought there was quite a bit there that could have been done, you know. But, you know.
Is it true that Scott Hall offered to mentor you? Oh,
he did mentor me. I remember even before Aldo, I was doing house shows as PJ Walker. And Scott Hall, I couldn't rent a car, for example. I flew, I remember like it was yesterday, I flew into Cleveland International Airport, Cleveland, Ohio. And I was 20 years old, couldn't rent a car, couldn't do anything. And I was traveling with the agents, Tony Gurria, Rene Goulet, and Chief Jay Strongbow. They were like, well, come with us, kid. And Scott Hall saw that and he goes, bro, you're going to get so much heat. Come with me, you know, because you don't want to travel with the office, right? Because then they'll think you're a stooge. So he said, come with me. And ever since that moment, we were road buddies.
So there was a lot of talk. You were part of the clique backstage.
Yeah.
Do you have any, how did you get involved? Is it because of Hall at this point?
It was because of Hall, at first. Of course, I was everywhere Scott was. So, it was just people, they ask me this all the time on the internet, and I find it kind of weird. The clique is, it has become something that was monetized, that was merchandised by the WWF, or WWE, I should say now. But it really wasn't. It was just a group of guys who got along. Like, for example, when Hunter first came to WWF, he brought Chyna. You know, Chyna was nothing like she looked like in the, at the end. And we all traveled together. Nobody traveled, nobody wanted to travel with Hunter. It's like we all kind of stuck together, and Scott, Kevin, and Shawn, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels, found some value in Triple H and Paul Levesque. So it's like we all kind of gravitated towards one another. So, there were times where we would rent a big van. For example, there was a story, and I must tell you, we flew into Montreal. And when we flew into Montreal, I forgot where we stayed. Joanne Rougeau, I believe, was the promoter of the Montreal or some of the Quebec towns. And we flew in, and we were starving. And believe it or not, some of the best steaks you could get was at what they call, I don't know what they call strip joints in Quebec. I think they're called peelers or whatever. But it was like a strip joint. And we went to this place. We started eating steak and rice. And then Shawn Michaels had this brilliant idea of, well, let's get a shot of Jack Daniels. And then it's like, okay, let's get a shot of Jack Daniels. And it was me, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Shawn Michaels. Excuse me?
X-Pac?
X-Pac was there, myself, and, they're all main event guys. I'm the bottom of the barrel. And as we're drinking and eating, time goes by, it's like, well, it's 5 o'clock. The show starts in Quebec at 7:30, and it was snowing. There's nowhere we're going to make Quebec City. And we were in a van. We're just, going as fast as we can, half of us drunk, okay? And just driving as fast as we could. And back then, we didn't have cell phones. So somehow we got to a payphone. If you kids don't even know what payphones are, we called Chief Jay Strongbow, who was there, and he's like, because that was the first match against Savio Vega. And they're like, don't worry, Aldo will be there. I'm literally getting dressed, and I was drunk, putting my stuff on in the car, driving about, I know you guys do kilometers, but driving very fast. at least 80 miles an hour, and just getting our stuff on. And literally, I got out of the car. It is still snowing in my Aldo stuff. They're hitting my music. And I'm running out to the ring, not having any idea what the finish is. But the fun part was, Undertaker, Yokozuna, and his crew were like, oh, okay, young boy, you're gonna play this big shot stuff with us? So they sat there and said, Savio, kick his ass. So they made Savio give me all these hardcore chops to the chest. And then Savio would look to the curtain, because Taker, Yoko, they were all peeking. And every time Savio would give me one, he'd look over to the curtain. Should I give him one more? You'd see all through the curtain, one more, boom. But those were the fun times. Those were. It was innocence. It was, a lot of it was stupidity, but it was. That's how it was back then.
Being involved with the clique, did that help you with your standing with the office at WWE?
I don't think so.
No, think it matters.
No, because I didn't have as much as being a part of the clique or whatever. It was more of a friendship. It gets so overblown today, and it's more legend than anything else. But those guys all had assets. The 1-2-3 Kid was the 1-2-3 Kid. Razor Ramon was Razor Ramon. Nash was, Diesel was Diesel. The list goes on. Hunter was Hunter. Razor was Razor. I was still Aldo. But what did give me some clout was when it was time for the renegotiation, and WCW was starting to come up, where they said, Scott and Kevin wanted to leave, and Vince could not match their offer, or didn't, financially just couldn't match what they were offering. And Scott called me, and he's like, bro, we got you a sweet deal. I couldn't go down there with the mask, of course, because that's Vince's gimmick, nor would I want to, quite frankly. But we'll get you paid, we'll get you a new gimmick, we'll start you from scratch. So I literally went to Stamford, planned a meeting with Vince McMahon, and it was Bruce Pritchard, Pat Patterson, Vince, and everybody else. And I said, Vince, I'm 23 years old. I've been wrestling full time for years now. I'm coming into my own. Like I was starting to get good, starting to get damn good, and I don't want to waste myself away doing a meaningless gimmick. So Vince said, well, pal, we can't let you go. It's just, it's just going to look bad for us because, all our talent's going over there. So what happened was, but what we will do is we'll send you to USWA in Memphis to work for Jerry Lawler's territory, teach you how to be a heel, and then bring you back up in a different character. Well, that was something else. I had just gotten married to my wife, Jill, and in Memphis, you only make $40 a night. And I lost a ton of money. I was there for almost 12 weeks, lost almost everything, because I had a home and car payments and, stuff in my hometown of Connecticut. Plus I was paying for a place to live in Memphis, a rental car, food, etc. So finally one day, Jerry Lawler, the USWA, they were doing an angle with ECW at the time. And I was friends with Chris Candido, and Chris said, why don't you just come to ECW? We're doing some really amazing stuff, man. Business is really doing well. It'll make you. And so somehow Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon, we didn't know this at the time, they were always working together anyways. I didn't know this. But somehow Paul and Vince worked it out that my WWE contract turned into an ECW contract, and in October, I became ECW 1997.
What did it mean to you to be part of the clique after all? Like, was this...
At first, I thought it meant the world to me. Mm-hmm. I felt very cool, mm-hmm. Very vindicated, because I was always, I don't know. I just always wanted to be something more, and I felt like they would help me achieve more success. But at the end of the day, quite frankly, none of them did nothing for me. It was more of a facade, because in the wrestling business, and I'm not saying anything negative about any of those guys, they're all, the closest I am to now is probably Sean Waltman, believe it or not. I'm very good friends with Sean, but it really, it was just all a bunch of BS. I was just trying to find my place, and they were the real clique. They played the game, and WWE marketed it as the game. And it's, again, something that was legitimately organic and something that was legitimately just real. We were all just real friends, supposedly having each other's backs, turned into corporate baloney, just corporate BS. So, I don't regret it. I wouldn't change it. But quite frankly, it didn't help me. It didn't help me at all.
At that time, I guess Triple H started to join the clique. Do you have any memories of that?
Oh yeah. I mean, they were all friends. They liked his look. He was a tall guy, in shape. Long blonde hair. They thought he was a money player. He could definitely wrestle. So they loved him. So they figured, let's get in on him, because in their minds, if the more guys like him we could grab, the more power we have as a collective, mm-hmm. right? So I think that's what that was all about.
Could you see it, that he was becoming a big star, or he would be a big star?
Honestly, at first I did not see it at all. I worked with Hunter a ton, and he had all the ability in the world. Maybe it was his gimmick, because the original gimmick that he came into when he was doing the bow and that stuff, I worked with him 40, 50 times. I didn't see it. But when he became the Triple H we know today, then that's a whole different story. But I guess they saw the potential in all of it,
Any stories about Triple H that people might not know?
Stories about Triple H. I've never once seen him drunk. Mm-hmm. He didn't take drugs. He was probably one of the most serious, focused individuals I've ever met, as far as this is what I want, this is what I have to do to get it. And not girls, not any of the stuff that comes with fame and fortune. He was very driven in achieving his success. Uniquely so. Quite frankly, I'd never, in the wrestling business at least, had seen anybody like that. And I'm not the only one to say it. I'm sure you could ask around. I'd never seen him drunk or on drugs, at all.
Rare for wrestling.
Very rare. Very rare, yeah. Lance Storm is another one.
Okay.
Lance Storm is another one.
So backstage, there was a lot of heat about the Clique.
Yes.
Did you receive any because you were a bit of the newer
Yes.
member and
Yes.
the less power?
Yes. A lot of heat, but I was protected.
Okay.
No,
Any stories?
No particular stories, unfortunately. I mean, I would like to make it juicy, but no, they knew better. They'd kind of, I would get a little, kind of looked at like, but they wouldn't dare touch me. It's almost, back then it was so rough because it was still a very tough man's game, and I was a little guy at the time. I'm not so little anymore, but at the time I was, and you really had to pick a side. And it was still very much, if you didn't have allies, you had enemies. And because of that friendship, nobody would dare cross my path, and I was fortunate for that, at least,
I understand you were backstage during the infamous curtain call moment.
Yes.
With the Clique breaking kayfabe and hugging in the ring in Madison Square Garden.
I was.
Were you invited to be part of that?
I was invited. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And I was told, you'll never survive this.
Oh.
If you go out there, you're done.
Is that what happened?
Yeah. If you go out there, you're done. Because I had no bargaining power. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They all had names, and what comes with names is television time, investment, action figures, video games. I had nothing of that nature. So I was easily, it would have been a cool moment for me, but if I'd have done that, I would have been gone without a job.
So you didn't get involved?
I was told not to get involved.
Okay.
And, I don't regret it. Everything happens for a reason. And, it's a great soundbite. And it's funny how they use it today, right? But if you would have done it back then, it was a whole different vibe, because we were in a whole different war. Not that I hate to say war, because that's a very serious word, but a very serious competition. And that would have not been right for me to do. I was not in the right position to do that.
Was there ever any offer from WCW around the time Hall and Nash came over?
No, not formally.
Nothing?
No,
okay.
No.
Because they seemed like they were signing a lot of ex-WWE.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
No. Did you ever wrestle The Undertaker?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, twice.
Very nice. You want to tell us?
I wrestled Undertaker in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Nice.
As a matter of fact, Wrestling Challenge 1994. Just a regular squash match. Mark was great, and I was in the ring with him too, where I was with X-Pac as part of X Factor, and we all came in to beat him up, and I believe he gave us a double choke slam. But no, Mark and I had gotten in the ring a couple times together, yeah.
Nice. How did you get along with his Bone Street crew backstage?
Oh, dude, I love those guys. Especially Rodney Yokozuna. Somebody tweeted something to me. I was in, when I was ECW World Champion, a friend of mine did a charity show in New Haven, Connecticut, where a lot of the Samoans were originally from. And I think it was Rodney's second or last match ever I worked with him in a 6-man tag before he passed away in an independent show, and there's actually footage of it somewhere on my Twitter feed. But yeah, got along with them very well, very well. They were all cool. We all got along. Believe it or not.
Do you have any memories of your tour in Kuwait? I shouldn't call it a tour, but
yeah, I do actually.
And is it true that you smuggle some drugs for Shawn Michaels?
Well, it wasn't for Shawn.
Oh, okay.
It was for me.
Fair.
I was doing cocaine, and I had some in my underwear area, and I had told Shawn, and we were doing it during the entire plane ride on the way over. And there was still a bit left. And when we were landing, they meet us with, all these military people with M16s and all these armed guards and stuff. And I'm like, there you go. I'm done. I'm dead. I'm going to jail. And, I was sweating. I was nervous. And, as it goes to happen, they were not there to search us or check out any of our stuff or strip search us or whatever like we thought, or I thought, at least in my crazy mind, the way I was at that time. They were there to serve us champagne and orange juice to welcome us into the country. So, yeah.
It went well.
Well, it went as well as it could.
Is there anything else coming up about that tour?
No, not really. I mean, I have some great pictures, and I wish I could find them of me, Undertaker, Hunter, and Shawn scuba diving at the right at the Black Sea of Kuwait. We all had Speedos and tanks on our backs, just going scuba diving, having a good time. I wish I could find them. It's hilarious too to watch Undertaker looking so nerdy and unafraid, looking so normal. But yeah, it was a great trip, great time.
At some point, you asked for release from WWE, but instead they send you to the Memphis Development Territory at the time.
Yeah.
Can you explain what's the difference between the Development Territory back then compared to the Performance Center and Next these days?
It's I tell you, you can't compare. I mean, they literally send you down there to make $40 a night, with no housing, no car. And $40 a night, make it work. So basically all the money I had saved up, I was still, again, paying for my place at home. I had a car payment, life payments. So I was losing money down there. But still, nonetheless, trying to do what I'm told. And I just had married my wife, weeks before. So this is her first glance at the world of pro wrestling, which I'm sure wasn't very thrilling for her. So after about the 6th week, Chris Candido and Paul Heyman and the ECW crew were doing an angle in Memphis with Jerry Lawler, interpromotional thing. And Chris said, PJ, why don't you just come to ECW? Things are happening. We're going to be on pay-per-view. We have a big following. I think you'd be perfect. And I'm like, I don't like that violent stuff. That's not for me. He goes, it's not like that. It's not all. Trust me. All you got to do is do what you do. And I said, okay. I trusted him. Paul talked to Vince, and a couple weeks later, I was debuting in ECW. And I believe it was October 1997, and the rest is history.
So you mentioned earlier you had no clue the funding was coming from WWE.
I had no clue. Nobody did. Not even Tommy Dreamer, who was his closest confidant. I had no clue.
So in reality, were you being paid by WWE or Paul Heyman?
Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman, yeah.
And what was your first impression of Eamon?
I thought he was great. I thought he was something out of a movie. Paul Heyman wasn't so much the great wrestling mind. He was a great motivator. He would be a great self-help guru or a self-help instructor. What he took was, he made you believe. He would talk to you and make you believe. He would make you he would look into your eyes and say, you could jump through fire. I swear to God, if you go get on this 50-story high building and you run as fast as you can, you're gonna fly, brother. And he would get you so jazzed up, you really could think you would fly. And that's what he would do. I mean, what he really did was, he was a motivator, but he also knew how to hide your weaknesses and exploit your strengths. So, hey, there's a lot of people that don't do good things. You know, maybe some people don't do good drop kicks or good, whatever the moves may be. He knew what you did well. He knew what you did not do well. If you're not a good talker, he wouldn't let you talk a lot. If you were a good talker, talk as much as you want. If you were a good wrestler, wrestle as much as you know what I mean? He just made sure he just used you to the best of your ability, and he hid your deficiencies, you know? So he was that's what made Paul Heyman. To this day, that's what still makes Paul Heyman. Well, his father's a lawyer, so there you go. But, you know.
Was your first match with Chris Candido in ECW?
It was Queens, New York, if I'm not mistaken. I was billed as Aldo Montoya, and the crowd was very hostile, as they always were in ECW. So I threw the Aldo mask off, threw it into the crowd. Wish I didn't, because it'd probably be worth a lot of money today. And then I I had an ECW shirt on, had a hell of a match with Candido. And then the next day, we wrestled at the famous ECW arena, and I wrestled Jerry Lynn, which I won. And there started the whole Just Incredible thing. You know, right there.
Any thoughts on him and his bizarre relationship with wife Sunny?
With who?
With then his wife Sunny. Do you have any thoughts about?
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for Chris. Chris was one of the nicest human beings in the world. He helped me so much, and from day one, she was always very abusive. Really, really hurtful, and I saw that. And even she'd slept at my mom and dad's home. I slept at her mom's home, and we'd all been friends. And I'd hate to say this, but she was very promiscuous. And I remember one day we all traveled together for a WWF show. This is before I went to ECW, and we were staying at Tammy's mom's home in New Jersey. And we were still all in our wrestling gear. We got out of there, figure, we'll just shower at the house. And Chris was the first one in the shower. And I was gonna sleep on the floor in the spare room. And Tammy had her robe on. And she literally pulled her robe off naked and said, "He's in the shower, why don't you take me right here, right now, he'll never know." And out of pure embarrassment, I just kind of I joked it off. I laughed it off. I'm like, "Oh, get the F out of here." And I, just tried to laugh it off. But I'm thinking to myself, she was dead serious. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm in your man's house. And to disrespect him like that, I mean, that's just I'm a lot of things, but I'm not that. That's just disgusting. And I just think she had a lot of problems, and back then she wasn't even drunk or using drugs. She just needed anything for attention. She wanted that. She lived for that attention. She wanted to be desired. And to me, it was just like, ugh, you know, it's like, I don't, you know, she was cute then, but it's like, you know what, sorry, you know, friends don't do that to friends. I you know, especially in someone else's home, your home, you know, Chris's home, that's disgusting. And that's when I knew that she was just not a good person, because you just don't do that. You don't.
She recently got arrested for, again, for some repeated offenses. Do you have any thought about Sunny and her arrest?
She's in a lot of trouble. She really she's narcissistic. She really you know, she just doesn't want to stop doing what she's doing. She's headed down a path of destruction, and I honestly believe that one day, sooner than later, and I hope I'm wrong, I really hope I'm wrong, because I wish nobody any harm, but she's going to be one of the headlines, you know, because I think she's in jail right now, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
I think she's going to do some time, and it's just a shame, because at one point, I mean, she's a Hall of Famer. At one point, she could have turned her whole life around if she would have just sought out help and really admitted you need help. Look, I mean, we all need help. I've needed help several times. I still need help sometimes, you know, and it's just a shame. It breaks my heart, but I guess that's who she always was, you know, who she always was.
It was reported that the Clique tormented Candido behind the scenes, and that could have led for him asking his release.
Sure.
Did you guys had any heat steaming from that, from the Clique being tormenting Candido?
Not really. I always tried to stay my own way, you know, but he did it to himself, unfortunately. I mean, it was, you know, Sean was having sex with Sonny right in front of his eyes. You know, and I hate talking about Chris like that, especially when he's not with us. But he knew. He was just so in love with her that he didn't want to lose her. So I honestly, in a way, I blame him, because I would not have taken that for one moment. And I don't think a lot of men or women in this world would have. I think he was just as much lost as she was. But no, I didn't have any heat with that. I just, you know, it's like, what are you gonna do? He was just, he was just a lost soul, you know. And many people tried to reach out to him. You know, it was just so obvious. You know, it was probably some of the most embarrassing things you could have imagined. You know, very, very sad.
It is very sad. You came in to ECW as PG 1987, and then changed your name to Just Incredible.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
When you were put with Jason Knight,
Yep.
who came up with that new name?
Paul Heyman.
Oh.
Yeah, Paul Heyman came up with that.
You began your undefeated streak with a victory over Jerry Lynn, which you mentioned earlier. How did you feel like about that push and not being well used over the years, and now finally you're getting a good push?
It was awesome. I mean, I felt ready. I felt they made you feel comfortable. When you work for a company like the WWE, it feels like you're walking on eggshells at all times. You feel very intimidated, very scared. There, it was very laid back. It's just like, just go out there and be a wrestler. Just do what you do. And that was very easy for me to do. I just went out there, worked hard, and did the best I could, and I got rewarded for it. Wow, what a concept, you know. And that's what I did. So it was amazing, you know. It was amazing. I was so happy.
The money was good?
Oh, everything. Money wasn't good at first. I mean, it wasn't bad. It was they were paying me $350 a night, but after the first couple of, I'd say after the first year, I was getting $1,500 a week. About the first year, it kept going up. But when I finally, not to fast forward, but when I finally left the company, where the company went under, I was making $3,000 a week guaranteed.
Very nice.
So, I mean, and we were only wrestling 2 to 3 nights a week, and I was close to home. So that money was a lot worth more to me because I could spend my time at home and drive to these towns instead of traveling all over, the world making the same money. So it was the best years of my life, both creatively and I hate to say personally, I hope to have better years, but even personally, I was having my first child. We were saving up money. We bought our own home. Just living the dream, living the dream.
Do you have any memories of working with Nicole Bass?
I do, yeah, I do.
She became your bodyguard in ECW. She was from Howard Stern.
Yeah.
Do you know who brought her in and how she was to deal with?
I don't remember who brought her in. She had her husband, his name was Bob. He was also her agent. I'm assuming he brought her in, but I'm not sure who the ECW piece was to bring her in. But she certainly had something to offer as far as a spectacle. Because she was such a very big girl, sweet girl, very sweet girl. I actually felt very bad for her because so many people, not just the fans, but other people would just make fun of her.
Why?
Her size. And it was a very different time. And as big as she was the most feminine girl. Just because she's such a big girl, she would cry so easily. And she was so feminine. Just because she was bigger, people would assume she's a man or tough. I don't know. It was just sad because I got to know her on a deeper level, and she was just such a kind soul, but also heavily under the influence of all kinds of drugs, both for size and for pain and
also
otherwise.
Steroids.
Absolutely. So she was unfortunately, she was a mess. She was a mess.
Any thoughts on her passing?
I saw her not too long before she passed. Just sad, it's like it's not the same girl. She was just out of it, always out of it,
From the beginning?
No, at the end, at the end, just, just, I don't know, just barely trying to make it by,
Did she stay with her husband, the agent?
He died.
Oh, he died before her.
Which was the problem. I don't know if it was. She had nobody else.
It affected it.
It was a match made in hell in some ways, but.
So, changing topic, do you have any memories of your feud with Tommy Dreamer? You spoke about it a bit earlier.
It was a feud that made my career. Tommy wanted to work with me, and he taught me everything there was about ECW. He taught me how to work a different style of wrestling, how to just entertain differently, how to manipulate an audience differently. He was one of the reasons to this day why I honestly credit Tommy Dreamer as one of the reasons I was as successful as I was.
What was it like to have Terry Funk involved in the feud?
Almost surreal. It was somebody I looked up to, and to this day I still talk to Terry.
Okay.
Mind-blowing. To work with one of your legends, to work with someone you love so much and you adore, and you cry with them, you laugh with them. Wrestling goes so deep for something that seems so fake and phony and that some people don't understand. Pro wrestling is as real as anything is because it's the emotion that's put in it, and Terry brings that out in you. And I'm just a better man for knowing Terry Funk. And I talked to him recently, and he lost his wife recently. And he's suffering a lot, and I was kind of worried about Terry, but he's planning on getting out on the road again next year, just for some autographs and some conventions. So hope to see Terry soon. But it was very enriching. I was blessed to have gotten to spend those times with Terry.
Is there one memory of your personal dealings with Terry Funk that made it special? Sorry.
Besides our weird little conversations in cars, because that's the funny thing about pro wrestlers, the most intimate conversations you have are either in hotel rooms or driving down the road in a car. And, it's stuff like that. And those are the ones, just talking about normal stuff like, oh, God damn it, I was trying to cut the grass the other day and, the lawnmower didn't work and stuff like that, just us being, you see the human side of him. And, because we all look at our heroes like they are heroes, and it's just nice to see through that other side, I guess, sometimes.
Whose idea was it to pair you with Lance Storm as the Impact players?
That was Paul Heyman.
Again?
Yeah.
An important role in your career?
Oh, very important, yeah. Yeah. And it was natural. It was natural because, quite frankly, Lance trained me. And, at the time, Lance was much better than I was from a technical standpoint in the ring, technical style wrestling. And but he didn't have a very good promo. He wasn't very flamboyant. He didn't have much of a persona, of an attitude. Where I was, I was robbing half from DX and doing half this. I was, and I was the Flair. He was the technical. But when we got together, I took a little, even though I know how to wrestle, we know how to do the same things because he taught, we're the same, very much the same. But when he got around me, he started to let loose a little bit and become more fun. And he started doing some silly stuff. And then I started to do some of his stuff. So we really blended because he trained me and we trusted each other, but we really complemented. It's like, what I don't have, you have, and what you don't have, I have. So it just melded together very well,
How was it working with Shane Douglas?
Just a dream. I'm wrestling Shane, next week, as a matter of fact.
Oh, are you? Where?
Yeah, in Orlando, Florida.
What will be the date when we post
November 9th.
November 9th.
Yeah. USA Pro Wrestling, November 9th. I'll be wrestling Shane once again. And Shane, we've had epic fights. And, he's great. I love working with Shane. And believe it or not, he's still got it. He's still in great shape. Still out there doing it, man. However old he is, he could still go. So, always looking forward to it.
Were you involved with the Clique when Shane had his issue with them?
I was, yeah.
Okay, do you want to?
Not in the WWE was he when he was Dean Douglas, but there was a situation in Orlando where I was staying at Scott Hall's house, and Scott was no longer with WCW. He had gotten fired, and I had brought Scott to a show in Orlando, and Bam Bam and Shane and Chris Candido got into an argument with Scott and kicked him out. So that was the only confrontation that we had. But I still stayed at Scott's house that night. He let it go. He laughed it off. But I'm sure it kind of hurt his feelings, because I think he started to realize, wow, I was kind of a jerk all those years. I think he started to kind of see his ways.
Any thoughts on working with Sid Vicious at Hardcore Evan?
Sid was great. I love Sid. I still talk to Sid, believe it or not. He's just a good old boy. Sid's a good old boy. He still competes. That old man still competes and
looks good.
Looks great. Looks great. Yeah, love Sid. I loved working with him. He was always very kind, very professional. I always loved working with Sid.
What about Sabu? Did you like working with Sabu?
Love Sabu. One of my favorite matches with Sabu was in Chicago, Illinois, Anarchy Rules 1999. I loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it.
And as a person, any thoughts about it?
Absolutely insane.
Okay. Want to tell us a story?
He's just very much, he was very, put it this way, because there's a lot of things that I can't say for a lot of good reasons. But he was very much influenced by his uncle, the Sheik, the original Sheik. And he's just very much that way. He's just a very hard-nosed, very, it's just his way. He's gotten a little easier now. He's a little more vulnerable with his old age. But man, he's still Sabu, and he still believes in what he believes in. And, the only way I can explain anything is it's Sabu. And if that doesn't explain it, nothing will, because he's just a nut. He's just a complete nut,
Any thoughts about working with Raven?
Raven was great. I knew Raven back in when he was Johnny Polo in the old WWF. He was actually managing Adam Bomb back in the day, and he lived in Stamford near the WWF office, and I was just a kid, and I couldn't even get into bars, and he would, I was just so happy that one of the stars would invite me to go out and have a drink. He's like, "Hey PJ, come up to this place in Stamford." I'm like, "Scotty, I'm not 21. Don't worry about it, kid, just come up," and just, I'd go over there, and no, Scotty was always really cool. Pain in the butt. He went through some real hard times until he got clean, and sober, which I believe he is now. But he was always too smart for his own good. He really could have been a genius in this business if he really. I think what killed Scotty was he came from money, so he didn't need money. And but if he did, he could have revel. I mean, he had such a big creative brain for this business. He really the sky would be the limit for a guy like Scotty. He's such a smart dude.
Who told you were going to win the ECW World Title, and what was your reaction to that?
Paul told me about an hour before the show had started. The show had started, and it was during this crazy time where Mike Awesome had signed with WCW and was still ECW champion, and Tazz was already signed with WWE. So there was a house show, and in this house show, Tazz came in and beat Mike Awesome just to get the belt off Mike Awesome. Which is weird if you think about it. All these three companies in the middle of this war collaborating. So Tazz wins the belt. And then the next week at the ECW arena, it is Tazz versus Tommy Dreamer. And of course, everybody knows Tazz has to go back to WWF. Still WWF. So Dreamer wins. He gets it for about 30 seconds. Then I come in, I challenge him, I beat him. Found that out about an hour before.
Do you think it was planned previously, or they just decided this?
Oh no, it was planned previously. I just didn't think they wanted anybody to know because of, people, telling other, the reporters or letting it out online or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I was told last minute, I didn't have to do
right.
I didn't. I mean, I was like, really? Okay. I was thrilled, of course. Yeah, it was amazing.
Any memories of defending your title versus PCO?
Yes.
In ECW.
Yes. Carl and I have been friends for a long time. I worked with him many times. I worked with them as with Jacques, as the Quebecers. I worked with him as when he did the pirate thing. I mean, I worked with Carl so many times, and it was Carl who actually, asked to come into ECW, and I told Paul, I said, yeah, Paul, I want to work with him. I said, Carl's a good worker. I said, I could have a great match with Carl. I think he's super talented. And Carl and I had always gotten along, even though there were some things with him and Kevin back from the Montreal thing that had happened.
What happened exactly?
There was something where, I guess, Kevin was the champion. He was wrestling Pierre, and Pierre wanted to go over on Kevin for the title, and just wasn't in the cards, but and they had some kind of scuffle. But Carl and I were always friends, so I was like, yeah, I want to work with him, bring him into ECW, and we had a hell of a match. I still, to this day, Carl and I still talk about it. I saw Carl. Last time I saw Carl was WrestleMania in New Orleans, because he was there doing Ring of Honor, I believe. That
was last year, no?
No, 2 years ago.
Oh, 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was that long. Yeah, it was that long ago. And we talked, and it's like, I was like, he still remembers it. I still remember it. He's amazing.
Do you have any thoughts about his comeback with Ring of Honor?
I think it's fantastic. I'm so happy for him. I mean, I think I just want him to be careful. I just don't want him to get hurt,
He's going hard, eh?
A bit. I mean, I get it. That's I understand, but I just don't. I like him. I just don't want him to. He's a good guy, but he loves the business. He loves the business. So God bless him. God bless him.
At what point did your wife start working for ECW merchandise?
Probably 6 months after.
Okay.
Probably 6 months after. Because, I was a bit of a free spirit, and Tommy figured, this is actually what happened. Somebody was, one of the guys that had been there for a long time, since the beginning, was found stealing money from the merchandise table. I forgot what his name was. His name was Damien. I forgot his last name. But anyways, and Tommy was like, oh, we need somebody to come in. And I'm like, well, and Tommy was like, well, if I bring her in, and she could also keep her eyes on you, keep you straight. And from then on till we had our first son, which was born in April 4th, 2000. She was on the road from 97 till then, every night, every town, selling merchandise.
Is it true she had to pay some loan shark Paul owned money to through that?
Yeah.
It was?
Yeah. There were times where Dreamer said, if Steve Carroll comes and asks for 50 grand, just give it to him. Okay. Yeah. Not through her. She didn't do it. She was told to do it.
So it was for Paul? Because
yeah. Yeah.
What are your memories of the XWF feud with ECW? Were you part of the big parking lot fight?
No, I was in the ring.
You were in the ring during
it
that
was
time?
me and Dreamer. Yeah, me and Dreamer were in a ladder match when that went down, which sucked because it kind of took away a little bit from the main event. But we kind of waited it out until all focus went back in the ring, and then we just kind of went back into our thing. So yeah.
So you didn't see it?
No, I didn't see
anything.
I didn't see anything. No, we were too busy. We had 20 minutes to fill pay-per-view time. So no.
At what point did you start noticing problems with your pay in ECW?
God, I just, you just kind of knew. It was just things were going downhill. You could just tell.
Excuses?
Excuses. I always got paid.
Okay.
But sometimes, it would take an extra week or two, and, there were a couple of trips I had to take to Paul's house. Not to threaten or anything, but just like, come on, Paul, cut me in your check, or something like that, not like being mean, just like, yo, what's up?
Did they bounce?
Some did. He made good on them all, though, at least for me. All I could speak about is me. I know a lot of people didn't, but for me, they all did. come through. I mean, he did owe us all a couple of bucks, but nothing, but you could just tell, you knew because there was nothing else being booked. There was always a schedule, and after December, there really wasn't anything. There was no television shows, there were no television outlets, there were no, but we were always being told that there's something going on, hold on. And then what I finally had done was, after January, I did my last, whatever the last ECW pay-per-view was, I just emailed JR and said, look, and I found out that, Paul was telling us not to go, and I'm emailing JR. Paul was already there.
He knew.
But he was telling us to stay. Can you imagine that?
It's awful.
And I just had a brand new son and trying to just get life by. And WCW was also going under.
So I was going to ask you, did you also reach to WCW?
I did, no? And they were going under too. They weren't hiring. That's what I'm saying. Jim Ross, yeah.
Okay, so Jim Ross. Sorry.
Yeah. So in 2001, I got my offer.
Okay.
Yeah. And Paul Heyman was already there commentating.
He had his new job.
Yeah.
You faced Sandman on the last ECW pay-per-view, as well as the final match in the history of ECW on January 13, 2001. Does anything stand out to you about those matches?
No,
nothing.
Just a lot of sadness.
Oh, was it?
A lot of sadness because we knew something really special was over. Nobody wanted us to. We didn't want this to end. It was such a family. It was really something very different than in my 27 years I've ever experienced. And I think if you speak to anybody in ECW, they'll tell you the same thing.
So the ambiance in the backstage was
very sad. Very sad. We didn't want this to happen. We would have taken pay cuts. We would have done whatever it would have took to stay. But it's what it is.
So at the end, you weren't owed any money, from what I understand.
No, I was not. No.
Any thoughts on Paul Heyman's success since with WWE as both Brock Lesnar manager and his behind-the-scene creative roles, including him now being the executive director on the Raw brand?
I think he's amazing with Brock. I think he's a fantastic actor, performer. From a creative standpoint, I don't see him doing much. Honestly, I don't see any stamps on what Paul Heyman was or is on any of these shows. I think from what I understand, the way they do the creative process is it goes down such a cycle that it's too much. If Paul Heyman was the one I'm Steven Spielberg. I may have people that work for me, but this is my vision. They have 10, 15 people, and they're all throwing, this, and it makes it very hard to, what your idea may be will then get turned around into something completely different. That's what made it work for Paul Heyman in ECW. I haven't seen anything from him on a creative side for Raw. I don't think I will. As a performer with Brock Lesnar, I think he's phenomenal. He's the best talker around. He's Paul Heyman. So.
At what point did you find out that WWE was funding ECW for many of the last year of its existence?
I only found this out a couple of years ago.
Oh, seriously?
Like, legitimately, yeah. I was listening to something with Tommy Dreamer and Stone Cold. Because I did Stone Cold's podcast twice.
Oh.
And Stone Cold on the second one mentioned something to me about that. And then I went back and I heard Dreamer's podcast with Stone Cold, and I heard the truth, and I was like, wow, Paul knew the whole time. He was BSing us.
Did you feel played?
Yeah, I did. I didn't take it as personally as Tom, because Tom put not just Tom, his family, tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, 70, 80 thousands of dollars into this. And so did Candido, and so did many others. I didn't because I didn't have it. But nonetheless, I could see and they seem to be fine today, but there was a lot of deceit, a lot of lies. And it's funny because there was a point where there was maybe 3-4 months. If you think about the landscape, WCW, ECW, and WWE all existed. And then in a matter of 4 to 6 months, only one existed. If one of those could have survived for those extra 6 months, where would the business have been? I mean, whichever one it may have been, it would have been a whole different deal, and it's just a shame. I mean, look, but again, everything happens for a reason, and right now, the business is flourishing. There's so many promotions, NWA with Billy Corgan, AEW, Impact Wrestling is still doing strong, Ring of Honor, so there's a lot of great wrestling. So
There is tons these days.
So it's actually quite good.
Any thoughts on the X Factor stable with X-Pac?
Loved it. Absolutely thought it was great. Sean and I always talk about it. We wish we could have done it longer. Again, the reason that happened was we were broken up because they did the alliance. Mm-hmm. Because I went with the ECW side, he went with the WWE side. Because if we would have had a chance to have been a legitimate tag team like we were supposed to, because we had a feud with the Hardys and the Dudleys, we would have gone quite far because we were a hell of a tag team. But again, because of the brand split or the alliance and whatever they call it, that's what happened.
Is it with who you were the closest in the clique, and still to this day?
To this day, I was closest with Scott.
Okay.
But right now, and for a long, long time, I've been closest with X-Pac.
Mm. Any contact with China over the years?
No.
No. Any thoughts on her passing?
Sad.
Another sad
Really
one,
sad.
right?
Really sad. Yeah.
Any thoughts on being an 8-time ECW hardcore champion?
Nah.
No, it went through.
It's just nah.
Didn't feel anything.
Nah.
Okay, so next one. There was a popular video of you talking about the infamous plane ride from hell. Yes. But you were interrupted multiple times in the interview. We're wondering if you could tell us that story of that day.
It was. I mean, it gets better with age because you always. I just remember there was a lot of booze. There was a lot of alcohol. It was a privately chartered 747. It was the end. We were coming home from Europe. Or from England, as a matter of fact. I'll make it quick and painless because, I forget quite a bit of it now. Brock Lesnar wanted to, Kurt Angle wanted to shoot with Vince McMahon. And they were grappling in the aisle.
In the plane.
And then Kurt Hennig and Brock Lesnar did the same thing, but they almost accidentally opened up the escape hatch, and that would have been a huge problem. A good funny one was JBL, Bradshaw. He had gotten cut above his eye during the pay-per-view, and Michael P.S. Hayes, who was the agent at the time, was pissed drunk, and JBL was sleeping, so he thought it was funny to go over and do one of those and split him wide open. He had a nice suit on, so his whole, he's just pouring blood. So there was another fight. So then after that calmed down, X-Pac waited till Michael Hayes fell asleep, cut off his entire ponytail. And then I'm sitting next to Scott Hall. He's completely passed out. And we land at JFK, and he won't even come coherent. I had to drag that big guy in a wheelchair, and I'm literally pushing him through customs. How does that look, right? And then all of a sudden, you know, I see JR with the black hat looking at me, passed out Scott Hall, just looking at me like, and I'm like, what do you, I didn't do a damn thing. So that is the longest story short of the craziest ride. Oh, and Nature Boy, naked with his robe, flashing every flight attendant he could.
Is there any regular people on the flight?
No,
just
just all wrestlers and a ton of booze and a ton of crazy. That's all I got. That's all I got because that's really all that. I just remember the cliff notes.
Was he mad about his ponytail?
Oh my god!
He must have been furious.
There was a lot of meetings that week.
So I guess Mr. Perfect ended up getting fired over his scuffle with Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
Are you surprised that Brock didn't get fired?
No, Brock was the future. Brock was the future. Kurt. He was a mess. Poor Kurt. I loved Kurt.
Thoughts on Michael Hayes still being with the company in good roles?
I don't know how he's still with the company.
You don't know?
I don't know what.
Because he had a lot of screw up.
He is a screw. I don't know how smart he is, but he can't be that smart. Jeez.
Why do you think they keep him?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I never liked him. You know what? One time, me and Jeff Hardy, it was WrestleMania 18. We had nothing to do. It was in Toronto, I believe. And me and Jeff were downstairs eating, and Michael Hayes and his wife were downstairs eating. It was just a couple of us, no fans. And Michael Hayes asks Jeff if he can go up and get him some Molly, which is, I don't know what you call Molly.
Like a drug?
Molly's like
ecstasy?
Thank you. I don't do it. So Jeff goes up and gets it for him. Then Jeff gets called into Vince's office the next day saying, oh, we heard you and PJ were on Molly.
He ratted him out.
Ratted him out, but it was for him and his wife. And I don't even do the damn thing.
They accused you?
Yeah, I was fine. I didn't get in trouble. But still, the balls on that guy, you know. So, anyways.
Well, I guess those are your thoughts on him.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Bradshaw?
I liked Bradshaw. He was a bit of a bully to some he didn't like. I'm not gonna lie. But I was around. I was actually there before he was there, so I got to work with him his first matches in the WWF. So we became friends. So I worked with him. Gee, I would honestly say 100 times, no exaggeration, up and down the road throughout the years, and he was always good to me. You know, always, never had a problem. You know.
Do you have a story about bullying that he might have done to someone that could be a...
Yeah, the other guys, he was just always the tough guy, you know, always trying to prove something. Nothing that comes to mind, nothing juicy that's, worth wasting my time. But, he always made sure he was the tough guy on the block. You know what I mean?
What is your opinion on the incident with the Blue Meanie and altercation with Joey Styles?
I only remember what happened with Joey Styles.
We'll have to ask Devin. So let's.
Well, I remember.
What about the Blue Meanie?
I remember the Blue Meanie that he split him open.
Oh.
That I thought was really not professional and not good because the Blue Meanie, his real name is Brian, who I love deeply. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. He didn't deserve that. From what I understand, I think he hit him with a chair or something, or punched him, something where he split him open very badly. And I think it was at the either the first or the second ECW one night stand, which was uncalled for. It was very deplorable. But anything with Joey Styles, I don't recall. But the stuff he did with Blue Meanie, I don't know where it came from.
Do you think it was intentional? He was.
I think it was definitely intentional. Definitely intentional. In 2006, when he was doing the billionaire thing with the car and the long horns and the limousines and the hats, I thought that was the real JBL. I thought that was entertaining. I thought he had a great run, but you know, at that point, I think what you see is what you get. You know. And sometimes you hear, you know, life imitates art and art imitates life. And I think a little bit of both happened to JBL. Because the same guy that I met in 1996 wasn't necessarily the same guy I met in 2007, 2008 when I was there.
What led to you being rehired by them and by WWE in 2006?
They were looking to restart ECW, and I got called. They wanted me to be one of the main guys, and of course, I mean, why not?
So they were trying to relaunch ECW?
Relaunch ECW, yeah, as a third brand, because it was just there was a lack of wrestling in the marketplace, and a lack of authenticity, a lack of a different kind of product. And I just thought it was, you know, at first Vince wanted to make it a legitimate brand of ECW. The reason I feel, and I'm not going to jump ahead to your second question, it might be leading, it might be not, but the reason it did not work was simply this. ECW was built on rebellion. We were against the machine. We were against the man. We were against corporate. We were punk rock. We were, you know, WWE was the Backstreet Boys. We were, you know, Green Day or Metallica. We were, you know, we weren't soft music. We were hard music. We were the real thing. And when the fans see that, even though I see the same guys on stage, it's not the same vibe, because we made a living off of saying, you know, WWF sucks, WCW sucks. And now when you're owned by the company, how could you dare say that? So we became just as soft. It just couldn't work. You know, they should have done the once a year special, and I think that would have been fine. But making it a full-time promotion like they did, and then making guys like Vince McMahon and Bobby Lashley and so many others ECW champions was a joke. Was a joke, you know.
You did lead to my second question. You wrestled CM Punk on his debut WWE match during this run, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about him?
Oh, we had a lot of fun. I was a fan of his from Ring of Honor. He was so happy, and we had a very good match. I still to this day one of my better, well, one of the most the matches I enjoy most from WWF television. And I literally remember him coming back through the dressing room curtain in tears, hugging me, saying, "Thank you so much for putting me over like this. You didn't have to do this. You did such a great job. You made me look so good." And it was a highly competitive match. We went long. It was like, you know, it was like a pay-per-view match. We went, you know, 10, 12 minutes. It was back and forth. So he was very grateful. And, you know, I thought it was great. Thought it was great, and I was happy for him. He deserved it, and he got off to a great start.
Do you think he'll return to wrestling in WWE or AEW?
I think, look, everybody says no. I think you'd be a fool not to. Money, look, I don't care how much money you have. You know, there comes a time where, you know, at his age, why not one more time? Do you want to live with that? You know, especially with what's going on. I think he already missed his opportunity, because I thought if he was going to be in the other, with the Chicago AEW show, would have blown the roof off the joint. But nonetheless, I think he will be somehow Don't know where, but I think he's not. CM Punk is not done yet.
What led to your release in 2006, and were you surprised?
Oh, I wasn't surprised. I stopped coming.
You stopped coming?
I stopped coming. I was told many things when I was there, and I wrestled Sab. I remember the events leading up to it. I wrestled Sabu, and I won because he put me through a table. I won via DQ because I wasn't supposed, you're supposed to use tables. And then I wrestled Balls Mahoney the next night, and he hit me with a chair in the middle of the ring. I won via DQ. And then they had me in some other baloney, and the checks were horrible. They were paying us less than I was making in ECW in the 90s. I was getting $1,500 a week. But if you really, I know it sounds like a lot,
no,
but
it's not, because
we have to pay for our own taxes. We have to pay for our own food, our own transportation, our own hotel. So what are you making, $750? You're making what a regular person makes working. My dad makes that in a factory. And I said, look, I'm not going to sit here and let you bastardize my legacy. I said, I'm not showing up. So Johnny Ace calls me, John Laurinaitis. He says, well, think it over. Justin will send you another ticket. And they pitched me what they had me do next week. I said, I'm not showing up. And that was it.
So, no surprise there, but good for you for standing for your brand.
I wasn't making anything. Wasn't making anything,
So what did you do? What did you end up?
I went to the Indies, and I signed with TNA in 2009. And I went to I did some overseas tours, nothing great. And floundering around until quite frankly today.
You had a lot of personal issue over the years. And
Sure.
You always were honest about it.
Oh, absolutely.
We don't want to get into specific situation, but how did it start, and what were your main addictions?
It started probably honestly in the WWF days, in the early WWF days. I mean, it was the wild, wild west. As far as just pills and stuff. I was very young. As you could tell, 19, 20 years old. I had no idea what addiction was. And I remember when I first knew I was in deep was after ECW. And I just had my firstborn, where my wife was like, we're going on a little bit of a vacation. Do you want me to fill your prescription for painkillers? And I said, well, no, I'm not wrestling. I don't think I need them. I said, okay. Didn't fill them, just went down vacation. First day, I'm like, not feeling very good. I'm sweating a lot. I'm kind of nauseous, Second day, I'm vomiting, diarrhea. All kinds of bad reactions. Third day, I'm literally in tears, shaking, and I don't know why. And called my doctor and explained to him what was going on. He goes, well, let me call something in for you. So he called something in for me. We were in New Jersey. I live in Connecticut. We were on the beach somewhere. And the minute I got my prescription, took it, and about 30 minutes later, I feel like $1 million. And light bulb, I'm like, oh, you mean that's what physical addiction is? Like, whoa. Okay.
So that was mostly painkiller, if I understand?
Yeah. At the time, yeah. But that's when I really realized, though, that I was even at that problem. I was that naive and that
well, that's
stupid.
what happens to people, right?
You're in a doctor. Your doctors are giving them to you. You're not, you don't think, I should have known better, but, sometimes, but that was my story. That's what happened.
How are you working towards overcoming them?
I have been pain medication free since 2011.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's been a long time through the help of this program called Suboxone, which is something I take every day for cravings and for blocking opioids, which is very popular in all of medicine, quite frankly. And you know, my biggest problem now is you know, I've had a problem, you know, is the booze.
Okay.
You know?
Those are hard problems, definitely.
Yeah, that's not an easy one because it's very easy, very obtainable. And, you know, but nonetheless.
How do you try to work with that? Have you ever used the WWE wellness program?
Oh, many times.
rehab?
Oh, many times. They've treated me very well. They were the ones that got me clean off the opiates.
Okay. So they help pay for the program?
Oh, they paid the whole thing.
They pay the whole thing?
Oh, more than once. More than once. And they paid for my therapy and everything. So they've been more than wonderful with it. Yeah.
Danny Spivey,
Yeah.
he said in an interview with us, so with the Hannibal TV, that he works with the program when wrestlers are entering into it. Was there any wrestler that, or past WWE star that helped you through this program in the rehab or any addictions?
Danny helped me.
Oh, Danny, okay.
Danny did help me, and Brian James, Road Dogg.
So he's part of the same program.
Yeah. Well, he's not part of it. He just helped me because he is in the program.
Okay.
And so I would say Danny and Brian have helped me in the program. Absolutely.
Well, we wish you good luck on that.
Yeah.
Is it true you have been working with DDP?
Yeah.
And what is the status on the movie about you?
We're still in production.
Still in
production. Yeah. Now it's just a matter of we're just trying to get the last couple of days because there's some new things that have happened with the new company that I can't say.
That's fair.
That we're trying to capture. That'll be the upside of the story. But it's very positive.
Good.
And yeah, things are really looking good. And actually, Dallas is going to be a big part of it as well.
Nice. Is it a movie about yourself, your life? Your
Yeah,
story?
my addictions, my struggles, everything. Everything.
Was that the same people who did the Jake the Snake movie?
No, it is not.
No,
No,
okay.
it is not. No.
So I guess you talked to us about pills you take to help you reduce the increase. Jake told us in an interview that he used and to use alcohol as a drug.
Yep.
So do you think that's something you could advise people, help people, or do you have any
For that, I
recommendations?
can't because of my liver. So I have some liver problems. But for anybody suffering with opioid abuse, I would suggest Suboxone. SOBOXONE. It's been wonderful. It's kept me off of opioids, like I said, since 2011.
Do you have any advice for people dealing with addictions?
Just get help. Can't do it yourself. Can't do it yourself. And you're not gonna. It doesn't happen right away. It doesn't. You don't just try once and magic happens. It's a fight. It's an everyday fight, and you know, it's a struggle. It's a road. But if you fight and the road keeps going, you'll get it. You know, hopefully. You know, but it's all about support of family and friends and loved ones, and asking for help. Yeah.
Changing topic once again, but I'm just curious, what is the tattoo on your arm? What's the symbolization of it? It's a triangle. Do you want to show it a bit higher, closer to your chest? You're not capturing anything. My cameraman is failing me.
Okay.
Is it symbolic to you?
This has many symbolisms, actually. Quite frankly, there's three. It's from my favorite rock and roll band, 30 Seconds to Mars, from Jared Leto. Also, it is my personal logo that I use on all my new stuff.
Okay.
But third, it is the pyramid of recovery of drug addiction and alcoholism.
Very
That's
symbolic.
actually what it stands for too. So it has three meanings. So rock and roll, wrestling, and recovery.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Thank you. On a final note, going towards Scott, do you know how Scott Hall and Kevin Nash are doing these days? And
I hear they're doing well. I saw Kev not too long ago. I hear he's doing really, really well. And Scott I haven't spoken to in a long time. Not too long, I mean a couple months, 3-4 months, but seems to be doing all right. Seems to be doing all right. I talk to the kid all the time. So, and I think you guys will be seeing from me very soon.
Okay,
Sooner than you think.
You've said on record that wrestlers are pretty straight edges these days.
Yeah, they really are. Yeah.
Do you think that one of the problems is that there's less of a character, less of a gimmick, and that in the past years, so back in your days and earlier than that, people were pretty wild and almost some of the time crazy for real?
I think back then, man, yes, you're right about that. But two, I think today the schedules are so less. Like, there were days there were months we used to wrestle. Like, I would be in Germany for 30 days, and you would wrestle 30 days. You would wrestle, get on a bus, drive, go to the next town, maybe sleep 4 hours, wrestle again, get on the same bus, drive. I mean, you'd wrestle every day, sometimes for more than 30 days. Today, it's you wrestle once or twice a week. And I mean, that's great.
Mm-hmm. Good for them.
But what you had to do back then was by any means necessary. Because if you didn't, some other young guy would come along and gladly take your spot. So it was just different, and I think the business has come a long way of providing health and benefits to not have that cycle repeated. You know what I mean? And we're really progressing in that way of not, killing ourselves to maintain our positions in the business. Because back then you had no choice. We had to just, we just duck. If we had a bone popping out, we just put some tape on it, do the best we can. That's what it was.
You said you're not a fan of choreographing matches in wrestling?
Nope.
It's been reported that WWE Next does a full rehearsal
I know, I hate
the day before their TV taping.
I couldn't do it.
It's wrong.
It's not wrong.
Okay.
If you watch a great movie, if you watch a great, whatever you're into, a play, well, plays aren't a good idea, but if you're watching a movie, some of the best moments are when you're unscripted, and if we're talking, did you just do that? Exactly. I can't pay for that reaction.
No, you're good.
But if we rehearse that backstage, it's coming. You know what I mean? And it's that reaction is what makes the realism come through on camera, and an emotion. If you know it's coming, you're like, you gotta go, oh, or however you're supposed to react. Sometimes there's a visceral reaction to improv, like improv comedy, or sometimes you say something funny, or you may fart or something silly. Sometimes the beauty's in the moment, and if you plan everything like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it just comes off like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I'm not saying it's not good. These kids kill themselves, but sometimes it's that little bit of surprise, that little bit of excitement that the fans will tell, the people at home could tell, the people in the audience could tell, and I think that's what really helps create that. So I'm not I don't hate it, but it's just like you're missing out on, because those moments that we all craved for when we were kids, of the Hogans and those guys didn't sit there and practice matches for days. They just went out there and did it. They just did it because you feel it. Because the crowd we have tonight is going to be different. We could have the same exact match, same exact interview, and they may boo it today, cheer it tomorrow, or vice versa. Every town's different, every fan is different, so you got to kind of listen to what they want and give them, yeah. So Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
No, it's good.
It was just an
good.
example.
It was a perfect example.
But it's an example of like, you know, sometimes you just got to get a little into it, and you can't fake that. You know, so.
I think it makes total sense.
Hope they get it too, you know.
Well, sure.
It's missing, you know.
AEW has now beaten Next in the rating 4 weeks in a row, and their Dynamite show has outdrawn Raw attendance the same week, 3 of 4 weeks. How long do you think it's going to do before AEW Next get closer in viewership, if ever?
I think the numbers are getting actually closer than I thought. I think AEW is losing numbers quicker than I would like them to. And I do a review show, and I would like to see them come up in the ratings this week. I think it'd be important. If they could stay over 1 million, it would be okay. NXT, though, seems to be going on the upward trend. It's going to be interesting. I don't know. I honestly, it's a crap. Right now, we don't know what's going to happen. But AEW needs to, I think a lot of fans still don't know what's going on there. If you're not, I mean, if you're a real fan and you know, then you're already watching. I think they need to get regular fans that don't know, and you maybe start to need to introduce, hey, I'm this guy because I'm this guy, you know, and stuff like that.
Do you think it has anything to do with Next running in a 400-seat venue compared to AEW putting shows in an arena?
A little bit, but not too much. Not too much. I think it looks a little more professional. Looks very much like WCW used to look. But you know, at the end of the day, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I just think they need to. All their matches look alike. I tell you, like, because I said, you know Vince Russo?
Yes.
Vince and I do a Friday podcast review.
You did an interview.
Yeah, we do a review every Friday on AEW, and to me, like I counted, they did 11 dives, like high over the. You know, all their shit's the same. It's like, how many dives are you going to do? All your moves look the same. Every match looks the same. Yes, they're very impressive, very athletic. I can't do any of it. But maybe it's time, like, to bring in some different flavor. I want to see maybe a Dustin Rhodes against somebody else. Maybe some veterans, a slower match. Just give me a little bit of different. I don't know.
Is Russo thinking the same thing as you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We're on the same page?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are. But what are you going to do?
You have been very against Ted Hart in past interviews. Have your views changed on him and all?
On Teddy?
Yeah, on Ted Hart.
He's all right. I mean, I don't know him all that well, to be honest. I just, you know, for me, Teddy's always been a little bit of a nut. Just a little nutty, you know.
What do you mean by that?
Just a little wild-spirited, a little kooky.
Okay.
I got mad at him one time because he was disrespectful to me. We were doing something at a MTV wrestling taping, and we were in a battle royal, and I was in the ring, and he threw a water bottle from his entrance, and it hit me right in the face, a full water bottle. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, I've been in the business 20 years. I don't care how high you could flip. Come on, dog. You're not even a real heart. Come on, you know. But I don't hold grudges. He's not a bad kid. Whatever.
Hi. We're doing the fan question at this point. So to get started, do you think you and Lance Storm would have done well as a team, as a partner team in WCW?
Oh, I think we would have been a great team anywhere. I was so disappointed because they actually had us team against Edge and Christian on Raw in 2001, and they didn't call us the Impact players. They had us go on a live Raw in Chicago. I'll never forget it. We had a killer match, fantastic match, and they never did anything afterwards. So I honestly feel like we could have been one of the best tag teams of all time, quite frankly, if either company would have done something with us, other than ECW, of course.
Do you think racial gimmick like Man-O-War are passé now, or could they still be done if they're done right?
It depends. I think they're a bit passé, but Latino, like for example, Eddie Guerrero with the Latino Heat thing, with the Mexican thing, that got over really well. The Portuguese Man-O-War thing was meant more for Brazil, because they're 75%, South America, 75%, Brazilians are speaking Portuguese. Mm-hmm. So I still think it could work, but maybe not to the degree it would have back in the day.
Duke the Dumpster asked whatever came of the culinary school you attended back in 2009.
I went to culinary school. I enjoyed it. I worked at a couple different restaurants, as a matter of fact. And quite frankly, as good of a cook as I am now, I really am a good cook. I cook every night. It was just, the money is not there. Unless you really, it's like pro wrestling. You start at the very bottom. I was making $10, $11, $12 an hour, and it just wasn't cutting it for me. I just couldn't afford to do it at that level to then, it was just too difficult, and, just not worth it. And it's unfortunate because it's something I am very passionate about, but it's nothing on how it looks like on TV.
How did you like working for Juggalo Championship Wrestling?
I didn't like it at all. The guys are cool. The Juggalos treated me good. ICP treated me very good. They're good guys. They didn't pay very well. But no, the conditions were horrible. Very much indie jabron stuff, and I would never do it again.
Would you ever consider opening a wrestling school and sharing your knowledge?
I would not.
But you do it on YouTube, don't you?
I do it on YouTube on Pro Wrestling 101, but unfortunately, there are so many competing wrestling schools now, and it's just not worth it for me. From a financial standpoint, it's always, anytime I've tried, put it this way, it's always been a losing endeavor. So it's not for me.
What do you think about Jeff Hardy problems as of late?
I've known Jeff Hardy since he was 17 years old. We both started doing jobs in 1994. He lied about his age when he was 16 years old. I remember him and Matt coming up with, Italian Stallion from North Carolina. And Jeff has had a similar path as I have in that aspect with drugs and alcohol. And I know he's suffering right now. And, I just wish him nothing but the best. And I wish him well. And I just hope he does all right, and he gets the help he needs.
Matt Femay, one of our fans, is saying that you were his top 5 during ECW days. So it's not a question, but it's a great compliment. What made you leave WWF as Aldo Montoya in '96?
I was 23 years old, and I was wrestling 250 plus days a year at that time. That's almost 700 matches in 3 years. So I was coming into my own as a performer, and I was outshining some of the top stars they had in the ring. So I just wanted more. I saw my friends going to WCW, making big money and getting big opportunities, and here I am stuck as being a jabron. So I just wanted more, and I'd rather go take my chances and go somewhere else than sit there and let my youth and my talent be wasted.
Do you still wrestle part-time on a part-time basis?
I wrestle every weekend. Every single weekend, I'm booked. I'm wrestling this weekend. I'm wrestling next weekend, and coming up very soon, I'm going to be making a big announcement where I'll be wrestling for a pretty big company. So, I'm still 46 years old. I'm doing the Terry Funk thing. I'm middle-aged and crazy. I might not be what I used to be, but I still got a little bit left in the tank. That's for sure.
Who was your toughest opponent?
Honestly, my toughest opponent has to be Sabu.
Fair. Did you know Vince Russo back in WWF?
I did, yeah.
Oh, you did?
I knew Vince Russo when he was writing for the WWF magazine, yeah.
Who were your best friend in the ECW locker room?
Lance Storm, Jerry Lynn, Tommy Dreamer, guys like that. Rob Van Dam, Sabu, those guys.
In your opinion, why aren't the big monster-looking wrestlers not getting an I'm not sure if it's an error, but why they're not getting a big push?
Why aren't the big guys getting a big push? Quite frankly, I don't think there are as many big guys out there anymore looking for that. I think right now it's the age of guys moving quickly, guys just doing everything so quickly. I think the era of the big man is lost, but not forgotten. And I think it's just a matter of a year or two before we see someone come around like the Big Show or like a Braun Strowman, who's already there, to kind of take those reins and to take that along. Absolutely.
Who are your closest friend in the wrestling business on a personal level?
God, I don't have many closest friends in the wrestling business, to be honest. Wow, that's a good question. Probably Sean Waltman, and this a couple guys you don't know that are on the independent scene, Scott Anarchy, and that's about it.
What was your average paycheck in ECW on a weekly basis?
$3,000 a week.
Just out of the blue, your dream match against anyone, past or present?
Me and the Nature Boy.
Why does the Click mention you in the DVD that you were a part of the group when Shawn Michaels said you were in it? You weren't in it.
I have no idea.
Fair. Did Mark, I don't know if it's a personal question, you could move it away, but did Mark really screw up your cooking gig at Olive Garden? Is this just...
Mark...
Who knows? We're moving on, G-Damn 78. Sorry, I don't know what they're saying. Any stories regarding Gorilla Monsoon?
No stories, unfortunately. I wish.
Okay, let's go for 2 new ones and that will be it. What town has the best arena rats?
Chicago and Philadelphia.
And the last one, why do you not attend Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in Wichita Falls, Texas induction weekend in May? Or would you consider coming if invited to meet your fan?
If they pay for my ticket and pay for my hotel, I'll be there.
Last comment, not a question. He's not just the coolest, he's not just the beast. This is my friend, he's just incredible.
Thank you guys for everything. I appreciate it. Wouldn't be anything without you.
Where can people follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at PJ Polacco, also on Instagram at PJ Polacco. And if you want any of my latest t-shirts, I have over 20 Just Incredible and Aldo Montoya t-shirts at www.prowrestlingtees.com/justincredible, and also my YouTube series Pro Wrestling 101. Just go on over to search engine, type in Pro Wrestling 101. You get over 30 instructional 5-minute clips on how to be a pro wrestler. Some cool insight. You don't want to miss it.
Do you have any final message for all your fan or anything you want to say to close the interview?
Guys, I just appreciate you checking me out. And like I said, check out everything we're doing. Me and Vince Russo. Check it out. Patreon.com/Russo TWC. It is great. It is Truth with Consequences. AEW review, 10 p.m. Fridays. It is awesome. And now that's not just the coolest, and that's not just the best. Thank you guys. You have been just incredible.